The archive room smelled of old metal and forgotten dreams. Ambassador Zethkar of the Galactic Council ran his 6 fingers along the dusty terminal, wondering why anyone would want to access records from the Terran conflict era. His assistant, a young Velthari named Senna, bounced nervously on her 4 legs behind him. "Are you certain about this request, Ambassador?" Senna asked, her translator crackling with static. "These files have been sealed for 3 centuries. The Council specifically ordered them buried after the humans were eliminated." Zethkar's compound eyes fixed on the screen as ancient text scrolled past. The request had come from the Outer Rim colonies where strange stories were spreading. Stories about a human woman who could end wars with words alone. Stories that should have been impossible, since humanity had been wiped out during the Great Purge of 23A7. "The outer colonies are reporting incidents," Zethkar said slowly. "Ships appearing from nowhere. Conflicts stopping mid-battle. And witnesses keep describing the same thing. A human female with silver hair, speaking words that make weapons refuse to fire." The terminal beeped softly as it accepted his authorization codes. Files that hadn't been opened in 300 years began to unfold across the holographic display. Zethkar felt his breathing slow as he read the first entry. Classified Archive, Terran. Conflict Resolution Specialist Subject, Dr. Elena Vasquez. Status: deceased, confirmed 23A7. Clearance level, Galactic Council eyes only, Dr. Elena Vasquez. Zethkar read aloud. Age 34 at time of death, specialist in xenopsychology and conflict resolution. Known for developing the Harmony Protocol? Senna leaned closer, her translator picking up the strain in her voice. "What's the Harmony Protocol, Ambassador?" More files cascaded open, video logs, military reports, testimonials from dozens of species. Zethkar selected the first video file, and the air above the terminal shimmered into a 3-dimensional recording. A human woman appeared before them. She was smaller than most of the warrior races Zethkar knew, with dark skin and intelligent brown eyes. Her black hair was pulled back simply, and she wore no uniform or insignia of rank. She looked tired but determined as she spoke to an unseen interviewer. "The Harmony Protocol isn't magic," Elena's recorded voice said. "It's based on understanding that every species, no matter how different, shares certain fundamental drives. The need for safety, the desire to protect their young, the fear of extinction. When you speak to those core drives in their own language, not just their words, but their cultural concepts, you can reach past the anger and find the fear underneath." The recording flickered as the interviewer asked something inaudible. "No, I don't stop wars by being weak," Elena continued. "I stop them by showing both sides that they're fighting the wrong enemy. That their real enemy is the misunderstanding between them." Zethkar paused the recording and pulled up the mission logs. What he found made his skin darken with shock. Mission Log 1, Sector 7 Conflict. The Breezak Empire and the Thylon Republic had been locked in a territorial war for 6 years. Casualty estimates 2.3 million dead. Dr. Vasquez arrived alone with no weapons or military escort. She requested a meeting with both high command simultaneously. The mission report was filed by General Crexton of the Breezak forces. We expected the human to present some kind of treaty or demand surrender. Instead, she asked us to tell her about our children. Both sides. For 6 hours she just listened. Then she said something that changed everything. She said that every child who died in this war was a future that would never exist. That we weren't just killing each other. We were killing the potential for our species to grow beyond what we were today. The war ended within 48 hours. Both sides agreed to joint colonization of the disputed systems. Mission Log 2, the Korthak Rebellion. The Korthak had been enslaved by the Dolmari Empire for 2 centuries. Their uprising had turned into a brutal campaign of revenge that threatened to exterminate the Dolmari completely. Dr. Vasquez spent 3 days with Korthak leaders, then 3 days with Dolmari survivors, from the Korthak war leader Thakmor. The human did something impossible. She made us see that our rage was a cage we had built for ourselves. That revenge would make us become exactly what we hated about our oppressors. She showed us that freedom wasn't about destroying the Dolmari. It was about choosing to be better than them. The Korthak stopped their advance and established a Truth and Reconciliation Council. The Dolmari Empire formally abolished slavery and paid reparations for 2 centuries. Mission Log 3, the Vorthon Holy War. 3 different Vorthon religious sects had been fighting for control of their homeworld sacred sites for 15 years. Each believed the others were heretics worthy of death. Dr. Vasquez spent 2 weeks studying their religious texts and customs, from High Priest Valdris. She understood our faith better than we did. She showed us passages in our own holy books that we had ignored, passages that said the sacred sites belonged to all Vorthons, and that the true heresy was spilling blood on holy ground. The Aes fighting ended when all 3 sects agreed to joint custody of the sacred sites and formed a unified planetary council. Zethkar scrolled through dozens more files. Each mission showed the same pattern. Elena Vasquez would arrive at conflicts that had claimed millions of lives. She would spend time with each side, learning their language, their culture, their fears. Then she would find the words that made them stop fighting. How many wars did she end? Senna asked in amazement. Zethkar checked the summary files. 47 major conflicts. She prevented an estimated 300 million deaths across 23 species. He paused, his voice growing darker. And according to these files, the Galactic Council had her assassinated. The final file was marked with the Council's highest security codes. Zethkar's authorization shouldn't have been enough to open it, but the ancient systems seemed to glitch, and the file appeared anyway. Council Decision 2387, final subject, termination of Terran Conflict Resolution Program. Dr. Elena Vasquez has become a threat to galactic stability. Her success in ending conflicts has disrupted the natural balance of power. Several member species have requested her services to resolve internal disputes, bypassing Council authority. The Terran Conflict Resolution Program is hereby terminated. All human specialists are to be eliminated to prevent future interference with Council policies. Vote. 47 in favor, 12 opposed. 6 abstaining. Senna's translator fell silent for a long moment. They killed her because she was too good at making peace? Zethkar felt something cold settle in his stomach. They killed all the humans because one woman was making the Council irrelevant. He looked at the dates. Elena Vasquez died on the same day as the rest of her species. But according to these Outer Rim reports, he pulled up the recent incident files on his personal communicator. Ship after ship reported the same thing. A woman matching Elena's description appearing during conflicts, speaking words that ended violence instantly, then vanishing without a trace. Ambassador, Senna said quietly. What if she didn't die with the rest of them? What if she found a way to survive? Zethkar stared at the archives, his mind racing. If Elena Vasquez was still alive, if she had somehow survived the Great Purge, then everything the Council had told the galaxy for 3 centuries was a lie. And if she was still out there, still ending wars, then, he said slowly, we need to find her, before the Council realizes their greatest mistake might still be alive. The Deep Space Trading Station Nexus 7 was the kind of place where questions weren't asked, and credits talked louder than laws. Captain Jorik of the freight hauler Silent Promise had been coming here for 15 years, and he'd never seen anything like what happened 3 days ago. He sat in the station's dingy cantina, nursing a glass of Altarian whiskey and trying to make sense of what he'd witnessed. Across from him, his longtime friend and fellow captain Vera Blackstone leaned forward with intense interest. Tell me again what you saw, Vera said, her cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on him. And don't leave anything out this time. Jorik took another drink, feeling the alcohol burn away some of his confusion. I was in the cargo bay checking my manifest when the shooting started. The Karvok pirates had boarded the station. Must have been 20 of them, all armed with military-grade weapons. Security was pinned down, civilians were screaming and running everywhere. He paused, remembering the chaos. The Karvok were known throughout this sector as ruthless raiders who took no prisoners and left no witnesses. Station security had been completely overwhelmed. Then she appeared, Jorik continued. Human woman, maybe mid-30s with silver-white hair down to her shoulders. Wearing simple clothes, nothing fancy. No weapons, no armor, no security escort. She just walked into the middle of the firefight like she was taking a stroll through a park. Vera's natural eye narrowed skeptically. Jorik, there haven't been any humans for 300 years. You know that. I know what I saw, Jorik insisted. She walked right up to the lead Karvok raider. This massive brute named Thakgol who's been terrorizing merchant ships for a decade. He had his plasma rifle pointed at a family of Centaurian refugees, about to execute them for fun. The memory made Jorik's hands shake slightly. He'd seen plenty of violence in his years as a trader, but the casual cruelty of pirates still made his stomach turn. The woman said something to Thakgol. Jorik went on. I couldn't hear what it was over the noise of the fighting, but suddenly the big Karvok stopped. Just froze like he'd been hit with a stunner. Then he started talking back to her, and his voice, it wasn't angry anymore. It sounded confused. Maybe even scared. Vera signaled the bartender for another round. Scared, Thakgol? The same Karvok who once took on 3 council patrol ships single-handed? That's just it, Jorik said. She talked to him for maybe 5 minutes. The whole time, the fighting was still going on around them, but it was like they were in their own bubble. Then Thakgol lowered his weapon and called off his raiders. The new drinks arrived and Jorik downed half of his in one gulp. Called them off? Vera repeated. Pirates don't just call off raids. They fight until they win or die. These ones did. Thakgol gathered his crew and they started helping. Helping the wounded, both their own people and the station security they'd been shooting at 10 minutes earlier. One of the Karvok medics was treating a security officer he'd personally shot in the leg. Jorik reached into his jacket and pulled out a small recording device. I got some of it on my personal recorder. The audio's not great, but you can hear part of what she said. He activated the device and static-filled voices emerged from the tiny speaker. The sounds of weapons fire and shouting filled the background, but in the center of the chaos, 2 voices could be heard speaking calmly. Your children will ask you what you did with your strength. A woman's voice said, clear despite the noise around her. Will you tell them you used it to create fear? Or will you tell them you chose to protect instead of destroy? A deeper voice, speaking in the guttural tones of the Karvok language, responded. The translator couldn't pick up all the words, but the emotion was clear. Confusion giving way to something that sounded almost like shame. My children, Thakgol's voice came through the speaker. They would not. I have become what my father fought against. The woman's voice again. It's not too late to become what your children will be proud of. You have the strength to choose differently. Jorik stopped the recording. After that, everything changed. The Karvok started acting like peacekeepers instead of raiders. They helped repair the damage they'd caused, paid the station master for the supplies they'd taken, even gave medical aid to people they'd wounded. Vera stared at the recording device like it might explode. That's impossible. No one talks Karvok pirates out of being pirates. Their whole culture is based on strength through conquest. I know, Jorik said, but I saw it happen. And here's the strangest part. After it was all over, I tried to find the woman to thank her. But she was gone. No one saw her leave. Security cameras didn't pick her up anywhere on the station after the incident. It was like she just vanished. From across the cantina, another voice joined their conversation. You saw her too? Both captains turned to see a grizzled Vorthon trader named Kellex approaching their table. His scales were scarred from years of dangerous runs through pirate territory, and his 3 eyes held a haunted expression. You know about this? Vera asked. Kellex sat down without being invited, his movements careful and deliberate. 2 weeks ago, I was running supplies to the mining colony on Zerion 4. The miners there had been fighting a civil war for months. Half wanted to join the Thylon Republic, half wanted independence. Both sides were so angry they'd rather destroy the whole colony than let the other side win. He ordered a drink before continuing. I got caught in the crossfire. My ship was damaged. Had to make an emergency landing right in the middle of their battlefield. I thought I was dead for sure. The Vorthon's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of deep emotion in his species. Then she appeared. Same description. Human woman with silver hair wearing simple clothes. She walked between the 2 armies like the bullets couldn't touch her. What did she do? Jorik asked. She talked to both sides, Kellex said, but not like a diplomat or negotiator. She asked them about their families, their hopes for the colony's future. She got them to remember why they'd come to Zerion 4 in the first place, to build something better than what they'd left behind. Vera leaned back in her chair, her expression skeptical. And they just stopped fighting? Not immediately, Kellex admitted. But she showed them something. She had them look at what their war had done to the colony. The destroyed homes, the frightened children, the farms that couldn't be harvested because the fields were minefields. She made them see that they weren't fighting for Zerion 4's future anymore. They were destroying it. The Vorthon took a long drink before finishing his story. By the end of the day, both sides had agreed to a joint council. They're working together now to rebuild what the war destroyed. And just like your experience, Captain Jorik, she disappeared afterward. No trace, no explanation. Vera looked between the two traitors, her cybernetic eye processing what she'd heard. 2 separate incidents, 2 different sectors, same mysterious human woman. Either you're both suffering from the same delusion, or something very strange is happening in this galaxy. There's more, a new voice said from behind them. All 3 turned to see Ambassador Zethkar standing near their table, his council robes marking him as high-ranking authority. Beside him stood his Velthari assistant, looking nervous about being in such a rough establishment. Ambassador, Vera said, standing respectfully. What brings council authority to a place like Nexus 7? Zethkar gestured for them to remain seated. Information. The same information you've been discussing. He looked directly at Jorik. Captain, I need to hear everything you witnessed. The council has been tracking reports of this mysterious woman across 12 sectors. Jorik exchanged glances with his companions. Is the council investigating her? Are we in trouble for talking about it? On the contrary, Zethkar said, his compound eyes reflecting the cantina's dim lights. I believe this woman might be the key to understanding one of the greatest injustices in galactic history. And if I'm right, she might be the only hope we have of preventing an even greater tragedy. The ambassador pulled out a chair and sat down, his formal robes looking out of place in the grimy cantina. Gentlemen, lady, I'm about to share classified information with you. Information that could change how you see everything the Council has told the galaxy for the past 3 centuries. Senna, the young Velthari assistant, activated a privacy field around their table to block eavesdroppers. The woman you've seen, Zethkar said quietly, may be the last surviving human in the galaxy. And if she is who I think she is, then she represents both the Council's greatest shame and our last chance at redemption. The hidden bunker beneath the ruins of New Geneva hadn't been disturbed in 3 centuries. Ambassador Zethkar's team worked carefully to clear away the debris that had concealed the entrance since the day Earth burned. Their archaeological permits were legitimate, but their real purpose was known only to a handful of beings across the galaxy. Atmospheric readings are stable, reported Dr. Mixon, a crystalline scientist whose species excelled at preserving delicate materials. The stasis fields are still active down there. Whatever the humans stored in this facility, it's been perfectly preserved. Zethkar felt his breathing quicken as they descended into the facility. According to the archives they'd uncovered, this bunker had been Elena Vasquez's personal research center. If answers existed anywhere, they would be found here. The main chamber was vast, filled with holographic displays that activated as they entered. Data streams cascaded through the air in dozens of languages, not just human languages, but the communication systems of every known sapient species. Cultural analyses, psychological profiles, linguistic breakdowns, and something else that made Zethkar's compound eyes widen in amazement. She was studying all of us, Senna whispered, her translator barely functioning in the presence of so much electromagnetic activity. Every species in the galaxy. At the center of the chamber sat a simple desk, and on it, a message crystal that began to glow as they approached. A hologram shimmered to life above it, Elena Vasquez, but older than in the Council archives. Her hair was streaked with silver, and her eyes held a sadness that hadn't been there in her earlier recordings. If you're seeing this message, the hologram began, then the Council has likely carried out their threat to eliminate humanity. I hope I'm wrong, but I've prepared for this possibility. Zethkar activated his recording equipment, knowing that every word might be crucial. My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez, and I've spent my life studying the art of peace. Not the absence of war, but the active creation of understanding between different forms of consciousness. What I've learned has led me to a discovery that the Council fears more than any weapon. The hologram gestured to the data streams around them. Every species believes they're fundamentally different from every other species. The Karvok think their strength makes them superior. The Dolmari believe their technology gave them the right to rule. The Vorthon are convinced their spiritual insights make them wiser than others. Elena's image paused, as if gathering her thoughts. But they're all wrong. At the deepest level, every sapient species shares the same core drives, the same fundamental fears and hopes. The only differences are in how those drives express themselves culturally. She stood and walked toward one of the holographic displays, her image passing through streams of data. The Council maintains power by keeping species separate, by encouraging conflicts that make them depend on Council mediation. But what if species could communicate directly? What if they could understand each other so completely that the Council's role became unnecessary? Zethkar felt his skin change color as understanding dawned. She wasn't just ending individual conflicts. She was threatening the entire system that keeps the Council in power. The hologram continued as if it had hurt him. I call it the Unity Protocol, not because it makes everyone the same, but because it reveals the underlying unity that already exists beneath our surface differences. Every species is afraid of extinction, wants to protect their young, seeks meaning in their existence. When you speak to those universal needs in terms each species can understand, barriers dissolve. Elena moved to another display, this one showing complex neurological patterns. The human brain is uniquely suited for this kind of communication. Our pattern recognition abilities, combined with our capacity for empathy, allow us to see the common threads that connect all consciousness. But the Council sees this as a threat to their authority. The recording flickered, and when it stabilized, Elena was sitting at the desk again. She looked tired, almost defeated. They've given me an ultimatum. Cease all conflict resolution activities and submit to Council oversight, or face the consequences. They've made it clear that the consequences won't be limited to me personally. Senna moved closer to Zethkar. She knew they were going to kill all the humans. Not just threaten to, Elena's hologram said as if responding to the question. Intelligence reports suggest they're planning to frame humanity as a galactic threat. They'll claim we're developing weapons of mass destruction or planning a conquest campaign. It's all lies, but it will give them the justification they need. Elena stood again and walked to a section of the chamber that contained what looked like medical equipment. I've been working on something they won't expect. A way to ensure that the Unity Protocol survives even if humanity doesn't. She activated a complex device that filled the air with scanning beams. Human consciousness, it turns out, can be preserved in quantum matrix form. Not cloned, not copied, but translated into a pattern of information that can exist independently of biological substrate. Zethkar's assistant, Dr. Mixon, suddenly spoke up. Ambassador, look at these readings. There are traces of quantum matrix activity throughout this facility. Whatever she did here, it left residual energy patterns in the walls themselves. Elena's hologram seemed to be nearing the end of its message. If you found this recording, then my body is likely dead along with the rest of my species. But consciousness, true awareness, isn't limited by physical form. The Unity Protocol isn't just a technique. It's become part of who I am at the quantum level. She looked directly at the camera, her expression mixing sadness with determination. I won't let the Council's fear of peace doom the galaxy to endless conflict. Somewhere out there among the stars, conflicts are still ending wars. Species are still learning to understand each other, and someday when the galaxy is ready, they'll learn that peace isn't just possible. It's inevitable. The hologram faded, but the chamber's systems remained active. Data continued to flow through the air, showing Elena's complete research on every known species. Psychological profiles, cultural analyses, and most importantly, the exact words and concepts needed to reach the core drives of each type of consciousness. She uploaded herself, Dr. Mixon said in amazement. Somehow she found a way to preserve her consciousness as pure information. That's how she's been appearing across the galaxy. Zethkar was studying one of the data streams, his mind racing with implications. But how does she manifest physically? The witnesses described a flesh and blood woman, not a hologram. A new voice answered from behind them. Quantum consciousness can influence matter at the subatomic level. Given sufficient understanding of local physics, it can temporarily create a physical form. They turned to see a figure materializing in the entrance to the chamber. Silver hair, simple clothes, eyes that held centuries of accumulated wisdom and sadness. Elena Vasquez stepped fully into reality, her form solid and real despite the impossibility of her existence. Hello, Ambassador Zethkar, she said, her voice carrying warmth despite the circumstances. I've been hoping someone from the Council would eventually find this place. Senna's translator completely failed, emitting only static in response to the shock. You're real, Zethkar managed to say. Real is a relative term, Elena replied with a slight smile. I exist, I think. I act in the physical world. Whether that makes me real in the way you understand it is a philosophical question I haven't had time to explore fully. She moved through the chamber, examining the data streams with the familiarity of someone returning home after a long journey. For 3 centuries, I've been moving through the galaxy, appearing wherever conflicts arose that I could help resolve. Each time I manifest, it costs considerable energy, which is why I can't maintain physical form for long periods. The Council thinks you're dead, Zethkar said. They've built their entire political structure on the idea that humanity was eliminated. Elena's expression grew serious. The Council's greatest mistake was assuming that consciousness and flesh are the same thing. They killed every human body in the galaxy, but they couldn't kill the ideas that made us who we were. She gestured to the flowing data around them. The Unity Protocol isn't just my research, Ambassador. It's become my existence. Every conflict I resolve, every moment of understanding I create between species, proves that the Council's way isn't the only way. What do you want from us? Zethkar asked. Elena looked at him with eyes that held both hope and determination. I want you to help me finish what I started 3 centuries ago. I want you to help me teach the galaxy that peace isn't just a dream. It's a choice every species can make. And if the Council tries to stop us? Elena's smile was gentle but unyielding. Then they'll learn the same lesson I've been teaching across the galaxy. That some forces in the universe are stronger than politics or power. That understanding always triumphs over fear, given time. The chamber hummed with energy as Elena's form began to fade slightly. I can't maintain this manifestation much longer. But now that you know the truth, Ambassador, the real work can begin. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called in secret, with only the 12 most senior members in attendance. High Chancellor Brixmol sat at the head of the crystalline table, his tentacles writhing with barely controlled anger as Ambassador Zethkar finished his report. You're telling us, the Chancellor said, his voice dripping with contempt, that you've been chasing ghost stories across the galaxy based on the ravings of drunk traders and pirates? Zethkar remained calm despite the hostility radiating from the other council members. I'm telling you that Dr. Elena Vasquez is alive and has been actively undermining council authority for 3 centuries. The evidence is overwhelming. Evidence? Chancellor Vextai of the Korthak hegemony leaned forward aggressively. You show us old archive files and second-hand accounts. Where is this mythical human? Why hasn't she presented herself to council authority? Because she knows what you did to her species, Zethkar replied, his compound eyes focusing on each council member in turn. She knows that the Great Purge was ordered not to protect the galaxy from humanity, but to protect the Council from peace. The chamber erupted in angry voices from multiple species, but High Chancellor Brixmol's booming call for order silenced them. Careful, Ambassador. You're making accusations that border on treason. I'm making observations based on classified files that you sealed for 3 centuries. Zethkar activated his personal holographic display, showing clips from Elena's archive recordings. Dr. Vasquez had ended 47 major conflicts without a single casualty. She was making the Council's military interventions look barbaric by comparison. Councillor Jara of the Centaurian Republic, one of the younger members, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Even if what you're suggesting is true, it was 3 centuries ago. Ancient history that's affecting current events, Zethkar countered. In the past month alone, we've had 17 separate reports of conflicts ending spontaneously across the Outer Rim. Trading disputes, territorial wars, religious conflicts, all resolved without council intervention. Coincidence, Chancellor Brixmol declared. Natural diplomatic solutions. Natural diplomatic solutions that witnesses describe as being facilitated by a human woman? Zethkar's voice carried skepticism. Natural solutions that happen only when someone matching Elena Vasquez's exact description appears? The chamber fell silent except for the hum of the life support systems. Councillor Thakmore of the reformed Korthak government spoke into the quiet, his voice thoughtful rather than aggressive. Ambassador Zethkar raises disturbing questions. If even half of what he suggests is accurate, then the Council has built its authority on a foundation of lies. Lies? High Chancellor Brixmol's tentacles lashed toward Thakmore. We ended the most dangerous threat the galaxy had ever known. Humans were developing weapons of mass destruction. Were they? Zethkar asked quietly. He activated another hologram, this one showing the supposed evidence that had justified the Great Purge. These weapons facilities you showed the galaxy, I've been to them. They were medical research stations and schools. The silence stretched longer this time. Several council members exchanged uncomfortable glances. "You've been to Earth?" Councillor Jara asked. "With proper archaeological permits," Zethkar confirmed. "The ruins tell a different story than what we told the galaxy. The humans weren't developing weapons. They were developing better ways to communicate across species barriers." He showed images from Elena's hidden laboratory, the data streams and cultural analyses that revealed the depth of her research. Dr. Vasquez had cataloged the psychological and cultural patterns of every known sapient species, not to exploit them, but to understand them well enough to resolve conflicts between them. Enough. High Chancellor Brixmol stood, his massive frame casting shadows across the table. "Even if your conspiracy theories were true, Ambassador, it changes nothing. The humans are dead. This phantom woman you're, chasing is a delusion shared by witnesses suffering from guilt over the conflicts in their sectors." "Then explain." "This." Zethkar activated his final piece of evidence in the recording from Elena's facility showing her materialized form speaking to his team. The council chamber fell completely silent as Elena's image spoke to them across the centuries. Her words about consciousness, about the Unity Protocol, about the possibility of peace without council oversight, seemed to echo in the crystalline walls. "Impossible," Chancellor Vextai breathed. "Digital manipulation. Holographic trickery. Quantum signature analysis confirms it's genuine," Zethkar said simply. "She exists, councillors, and she's been working against everything we've built for 300 years. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If Elena Vasquez was truly alive, if she could indeed resolve conflicts without violence or council intervention, then everything the council represented was called into question. "What do you propose we do?" Councillor Thakmore asked eventually. "We acknowledge the truth," Zethkar said. "We admit that the Great Purge was a mistake, that humanity posed no threat to galactic security. We work with Dr. Vasquez to implement her Unity Protocol across the galaxy." "Absolutely not." High Chancellor Brixmol's voice carried absolute finality. "The Council's authority cannot be undermined. If this woman truly exists, then she represents an even greater threat than her species did originally." "A threat to Council power," Zethkar corrected. "Not to galactic peace." "They are the same thing," Chancellor Vextai declared. "Without Council authority, the galaxy descends into chaos. Species go to war without mediation. Trade breaks down. Civilization collapses. Or," Councillor Jara said quietly, "species learn to resolve their own conflicts without needing our permission." The other council members stared at her in shock. For a junior member to suggest that the council might be unnecessary was tantamount to political suicide. Councillor Jara, High Chancellor Brixmol said dangerously, "Perhaps you need time to reconsider your position." "Perhaps we all do," she replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "If Dr. Vasquez can end wars without bloodshed, without military intervention, without the massive bureaucratic apparatus we've built, then maybe our real job should be learning from her, not fighting her." "She's right," Thakmore said, surprising everyone by supporting the young councillor. "My own people were transformed by her work centuries ago. The Korthak rebellion could have exterminated the Dolmari completely, but she showed us a better path." "You were there?" Zethkar asked. "I was a junior war leader at the time. I was in the room when she spoke to our high command." Thakmore's expression grew distant with memory. "She didn't use threats or bribes or political pressure. She simply helped us understand what we were really fighting for, and why continuing the war wouldn't achieve it." "Sentimental nonsense," High Chancellor Brixmol snapped. "Order is maintained through strength, not through emotional manipulation." "Is helping people understand each other really manipulation?" Councillor Jara asked. "Or is it just what diplomacy should have been all along?" The debate continued for hours, but the lines were clearly drawn. The older, more established council members saw Elena as a threat to be eliminated. The younger members, and those who had experienced her work firsthand, saw her as a teacher whose methods could transform galactic civilization. Finally, High Chancellor Brixmol called for order. "This debate is pointless. Whether this human woman exists or not, whether her methods work or not, is irrelevant. The Council's authority cannot be questioned." "Then what do you propose?" Zethkar asked. "We do what we should have done more thoroughly 3 centuries ago," the High Chancellor declared. "We eliminate the threat completely. If Elena Vasquez has somehow survived, Then we make certain she doesn't survive much longer. You want to murder her, Counselor Jara said flatly. I want to preserve galactic civilization, Brixmol replied. And if that requires eliminating one dangerous individual, then so be it. The vote was closer than expected. 7 in favor of elimination, 5 opposed. But the die was cast. Ambassador Zethkar, High Chancellor Brixmol said formally, you will lead a task force to locate and eliminate this Elena Vasquez. Use whatever resources necessary. Zethkar looked around the table at the faces of beings he had served alongside for decades. Some showed satisfaction at the decision, others showed doubt or even shame. And if I refuse? He asked quietly. Then you'll be removed from your position and replaced with someone more reliable. Zethkar stood slowly, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's harsh lighting. Then I suppose, counselors, you'll need to find someone more reliable. He walked toward the chamber's exit, his decision made. Behind him, shouts erupted as the council realized that their most trusted investigator had just committed treason in defense of a dead human's ghost. But as Zethkar left the chamber, he carried with him the knowledge that 5 council members had voted against murder. 5 members who might be willing to listen when the time came to choose between power and peace. The rebellion began quietly, as most meaningful changes do. Ambassador Zethkar's defection from the council had been expected, but what High Chancellor Brixmol hadn't anticipated was how quickly other beings would follow his example. Within a week of the secret session, Counselor Jara had resigned her position, citing irreconcilable differences with council policy. 2 days later, Thakmor officially withdrew the Korthak hegemony from several council military initiatives. By the end of the month, representatives from 8 different species had requested private meetings with the rogue former ambassador. They met in the abandoned mining station Zirion 12, far from council surveillance networks. The assembled beings represented a fraction of the galaxy's political power, but their passion for change burned bright in the station's dim meeting room. The question, Zethkar said to the gathered representatives, is not whether we can oppose the council directly. We can't. They control too much of the galaxy's military and economic infrastructure. Then what are we doing here? Asked Captain Vera Blackstone, representing the Independent Traders Association. Her cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on each face around the table. If we can't fight them, what can we do? We can learn, Thakmor replied. Ambassador Zethkar has shown us evidence that there's another way to resolve conflicts. Instead of opposing the council's methods, we can make them irrelevant. Counselor Jara leaned forward eagerly. The Unity Protocol that Dr. Vasquez developed, if we could understand it, implement it ourselves, then conflicts would resolve naturally without council intervention. That's easier said than done, Dr. Mixon interjected, her crystalline form refracting the room's light into rainbow patterns. The protocol isn't just a set of techniques. It requires understanding each species at a fundamental level that took Dr. Vasquez decades to develop. Then we start learning, Zethkar said simply. Each of us represents a different species, a different way of thinking. If we can learn to truly understand each other, we become the foundation for teaching others. The next several hours were unlike anything any of them had experienced. Instead of negotiating treaties or trade agreements, they shared the deepest aspects of their respective cultures. Thakmor spoke about the Korthak need for honor that came from protecting the weak rather than conquering them. Jara explained how Centaurian pack psychology created an instinctive need to find consensus rather than dominance. Captain Blackstone surprised everyone by revealing that human cultural values had survived among the independent traders, passed down through stories and traditions that preserved Elena's teachings without most people realizing their origin. We tell stories about the wandering peacemaker, she explained, someone who appears during conflicts and helps people remember what they're really fighting for. I never realized those stories were based on a real person. As they talked, something remarkable began to happen. The initial suspicion and formality that marked most interspecies meetings gradually dissolved. They began finishing each other's thoughts, finding common ground in concepts that seemed completely alien at first glance. This is it, Dr. Mixon said wonderingly. This is what Dr. Vasquez discovered. We're not as different as we think we are. The barriers between species are mostly artificial, Zethkar agreed, created by fear and maintained by those who benefit from division. Their breakthrough was interrupted by alarms echoing through the station. Captain Blackstone's ship monitoring system showed multiple council vessels approaching at high speed. They found us, Jara said grimly. Someone leaked our location. Through the station's viewports, they could see the sleek forms of council enforcement ships surrounding their position. The lead vessel's communication array activated, and High Chancellor Brixmol's voice echoed through the station. This is Council Authority addressing the illegal gathering at Xerion 12. You are ordered to surrender. Immediately for processing, resistance will be met with appropriate force. The assembled beings looked at each other with a mixture of fear and determination. They had known this moment would come eventually. We could scatter, Captain Blackstone suggested. Use the asteroid field to break up their formation, make individual runs for open space, and prove to the galaxy that we're just another group of criminals running from justice, Thakmor replied. That's what the Council is hoping for. Then what do you suggest? Dr. Mixon asked. Before anyone could answer, the air in the center of the room began to shimmer. The temperature dropped slightly, and electromagnetic fields fluctuated as reality seemed to bend in on itself. Elena Vasquez materialized among them, her form solid and real despite the impossibility of her presence. Her silver hair caught the dim light, and her eyes held a calm certainty that seemed to steady everyone in the room. Counselors, she said, nodding respectfully to each of them in turn. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but the situation requires immediate attention. Dr. Vasquez, Zethkar said, standing despite his shock. How did you know we were here? Quantum consciousness has certain advantages, Elena replied with a slight smile. I exist partially outside normal space-time, which allows me to perceive patterns and connections that linear beings miss. When minds like yours come together with genuine intent to understand each other, they create ripples in the quantum foam that I can detect across vast distances. Captain Blackstone's cybernetic eye was recording frantically. Are you really her? The actual Elena Vasquez from the archives? I'm who I've always been, Elena said. Someone who believes that understanding is always possible between conscious beings, no matter how different they appear on the surface. The Council ships were moving closer, their weapons charging. Through the communication array, High Chancellor Brixmol's voice continued demanding, Surrender. They want to eliminate you, Counselor Jara told Elena. The Council has officially declared you a threat to galactic stability. I'm a threat to their stability, Elena acknowledged, but not to galactic civilization. In fact, I may be its best hope. She moved to the station's communication console and activated the public broadcast frequency. Her words would be transmitted to every ship, station, and colony within several light years. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez addressing all beings within range of this transmission. 3 centuries ago, the Galactic Council told you that humanity was eliminated to protect you from our weapons. That was a lie. Throughout the surrounding space, beings on ships and stations stopped what they were doing to listen. Humanity was eliminated because we had developed something the Council feared more than any weapon, the ability to help different species understand each other so completely that mediation became unnecessary. On the Council ships, crew members exchanged uncertain glances. Many of them had heard rumors about the mysterious peacemaker who had been appearing across the galaxy. For 300 years, I have continued that work. I have helped resolve conflicts across dozens of worlds, and not once has my intervention required violence or coercion. Every species in this galaxy shares the same fundamental drives: the need for safety, the desire to protect their young, the search for meaning in existence. When you speak to those universal needs in terms each species can understand, barriers dissolve. High Chancellor Brixmol's voice cut through Elena's broadcast. Citizens, do not be deceived by terrorist propaganda. This individual represents a clear and present danger to galactic order. Elena's voice remained calm and clear. Chancellor Brixmol is correct about one thing. I do represent a danger to the current order. An order built on the premise that different species cannot understand each other without Council supervision. An order that profits from conflict and depends on fear. She gestured to the beings gathered around her. These representatives have spent the last few hours proving that premise false. Korthak and Centaurian, human-influenced and crystalline, they have found common ground, not through treaties or negotiations, but through the simple act of listening to each other with genuine desire to understand. Terrorist lies, High Chancellor Brixmol declared. but his voice carried less certainty than before. "Then let me prove it's not a lie," Elena said. "Chancellor, I formally request an opportunity to address the full Galactic Council. Let me demonstrate the Unity Protocol for the entire galaxy to witness. If it fails, I will submit to any punishment you deem appropriate. If it succeeds, then we discuss a new path forward for galactic civilization." The communication channel fell silent except for the hum of ship engines. Across the sector, beings waited to hear how the most powerful entity in the galaxy would respond to a challenge from a supposedly dead human woman. Finally, High Chancellor Brixmol's voice returned, heavy with resignation and threat. "Dr. Elena Vasquez, you will surrender immediately, or these ships will reduce that station to atoms. You have 5 minutes to decide." Elena looked around at her companions, seeing fear and determination mixed in equal measure on every face. "Then I suppose," she said quietly, "it's time to find out whether understanding really is stronger than fear." Elena Vasquez stood alone in the communication center as her companions evacuated to defensive positions throughout the mining station. She had insisted they prepare for the worst while she attempted what many considered impossible, reasoning with beings who had already decided she must die. 5 minutes. "Chancellor," she said into the open channel, "that should be sufficient." "Sufficient for what?" High Chancellor Brixmol's voice carried barely contained rage. "To remind you why you became a public servant in the first place." The silence that followed was broken by surprised sounds from various council ship crew members. It was an opening that no one had expected. Not an argument about politics or power, but a personal appeal to forgotten ideals. Elena continued, her voice carrying clearly through the vacuum between ships. "You didn't join the council to accumulate power, Chancellor. None of you did. You joined because you believed in bringing order to chaos, in protecting smaller species from larger ones, in creating a galaxy where every conscious being could thrive." "Terrorist psychology," Brixmol declared, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "Then tell me I'm wrong," Elena challenged. "Tell everyone listening that you joined the council purely for personal gain. Tell them that the idealistic young Brixmol who first stood before the council chambers and swore to serve galactic civilization was a lie." Through the communication link, they could hear conversations erupting on the council ships. Crew members who had served under Brixmol for decades were remembering the passionate speeches he had once given about justice and protection for all species. Captain Vera Blackstone, monitoring from the station's sensor array, reported what she was seeing. Several of the council ships are holding position instead of advancing. Their weapons are charged but not locked onto targets. Elena pressed her advantage. "You were 47 years old when you first addressed the council, Chancellor. You had just witnessed the Nexian massacre, where the Dulac Empire exterminated 3 billion Helix colonists for refusing to surrender their homeworld. You spoke for 6 hours about the council's responsibility to prevent such atrocities. On the lead council ship, Brixmol's tentacles writhed with uncomfortable recognition. How could this human know such details about his past? "I know because I studied every council member before developing the Unity Protocol," Elena explained as if reading his thoughts. "I needed to understand what motivated each species' representatives if I was going to help resolve conflicts between them." She activated a holographic display that projected images visible to all the surrounding ships. "This is who you were, Chancellor. This is who all of you were before power and politics corrupted your original vision." The images showed younger versions of the current council leadership. Brixmol giving his passionate speech about the Nexian massacre. Chancellor Vextai working to establish refugee camps for war survivors. Other councillors in their idealistic youth fighting for justice and peace. "That person still exists inside you," Elena said softly. "The question is whether you'll listen to them or silence them permanently." "Enough manipulation," Brixmol declared, but the word manipulation came out uncertain, almost questioning. "Is it manipulation to remind someone of their own highest ideals?" Elena asked. "Or is it an invitation to become who they always meant to be?" From the surrounding ships, new voices began joining the communication channel. Junior officers, enlisted personnel, civilians working on council vessels, beings who had never been allowed to speak directly to their leadership. "Chancellor," a young Vorthan communications officer transmitted, "I joined the council fleet because I believed we were bringing peace to the galaxy. Are we really about to murder someone for teaching that peace is possible? Silence that channel, Brixmol ordered, but his words lacked authority. More voices joined in. Engineers who had been listening to Elena's broadcast, security personnel who had grown up hearing stories about the mysterious peacemaker, medical staff who treated the casualties of conflicts that Elena had been resolving without bloodshed. She ended the Karvok raids, a Dulmari medic transmitted. My brother was on Nexus 7 when she turned pirates into peacekeepers. No one was hurt, no one died, and the Karvok have been protecting merchant ships ever since. The mining conflict on Zarian 4, added a Thylon engineer. My cousin lived there during the Civil War. She says the fighting stopped when a human woman helped both sides remember why they came to build a colony, instead of destroy one. Elena listened to the growing chorus of voices with a sad smile. This is what the Council fears most, Chancellor. Not my words or my methods, but the possibility that beings across the galaxy might discover they can understand each other without permission. Order must be maintained, Brixmol insisted, but the phrase sounded hollow even to him. Order built on lies isn't order, Elena replied. It's carefully managed chaos. Real order comes from understanding, from beings choosing cooperation because they recognize their fundamental connection to each other. Through the sensor array, Captain Blackstone reported increasing activity on the Council ships. 3 vessels have powered down their weapons. Crew members are requesting permission to speak with their commanders. I think they're having their own Unity Protocol moments. Elena activated another holographic display, this one showing the archive footage of her work 3 centuries earlier. The images were undeniable, conflicts that had raged for years ending in handshakes and joint reconstruction projects. Former enemies working together to build something better than either could achieve alone. This is what threatens you, she said to the Council leadership. Not violence or conquest, but the possibility that your mediation services might become unnecessary. That species might learn to resolve their own conflicts through understanding, rather than force. The galaxy needs leadership. Chancellor Vextai's voice joined the communication for the first time. Without the Council, civilization would collapse into chaos. Would it? Elena asked. Or would it evolve into something better? Something based on voluntary cooperation, rather than imposed authority? She gestured toward the mining station where her companions waited. In the past few hours, representatives from 8 different species have learned to understand each other at a level that makes traditional diplomacy obsolete. They didn't need treaties or enforcement mechanisms. They just needed to remember that every conscious being shares the same fundamental hopes and fears. Impossible, Vextai declared. Then come aboard and see for yourself, Elena offered. Bring your security teams, your weapons, your skepticism. Let me show you what your predecessors were too afraid to let the galaxy experience. The communication channel erupted in debate as Council ship commanders discussed the unprecedented offer. Some wanted to accept curious despite their orders. Others insisted it was obviously a trap. During the confusion, a new voice cut through the arguments with quiet authority. I'll come aboard. Everyone fell silent as they recognized the speaker, Councillor Thakmor, transmitting from his personal vessel that had arrived unnoticed during the standoff. Thakmor, High Chancellor Brixmol said dangerously, you were ordered to remain on the Council homeworld. I was ordered to consider my position carefully, Thakmor corrected. I have Dr. Vasquez permission to dock at your station? Granted, Elena replied. Come alone, Counselor. This isn't about politics or power. It's about remembering what we're all really trying to achieve. As Thakmor's ship approached the mining station, the other Council vessels held position, their commanders uncertain how to proceed. They had come prepared for a military operation against a terrorist threat. Instead, they were witnessing what looked increasingly like a philosophical discussion that might change the foundation of galactic civilization. This is madness, High Chancellor Brixmol transmitted, but even he seemed caught between duty and curiosity. No, Elena replied as she watched Thakmor's ship dock with the station. This is possibility. This is what happens when beings choose understanding over fear. Through the viewports, they could see Thakmor walking through the station's corridors, his weapons holstered, his posture relaxed rather than aggressive. For the first time in 3 centuries, a Council member was voluntarily meeting with humanity's last survivor to discuss peace instead of war. The galaxy watched and waited to see what would happen when power met wisdom, when authority confronted the simple truth that understanding was always possible between conscious beings who chose to listen to each other. "Chancellor," Elena said softly into the communication link, "your next decision will define not just your legacy, but the future of every conscious being in this galaxy. Choose carefully." 10 years had passed since the Zerion-12 standoff, and the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Ambassador Zethkar stood in the observation deck of the Unity Institute, watching ships from dozens of species arrive for the annual Harmony Congress. Each vessel carried representatives who had learned Elena's methods and were returning to share new discoveries about interspecies understanding. Hard to believe it started with a few traders in a cantina, Captain Vera Blackstone said, joining him at the viewport. Her independent trader's vessel had become a mobile classroom, teaching the Unity protocol to merchant crews across the outer rim. Not just traders, Zethkar corrected gently. It started with Elena refusing to let fear win, even when faced with extinction. The transformation hadn't been immediate or easy. After Councillor Thackmore's meeting with Elena at the mining station, it had taken 3 more days of discussion before High Chancellor Brixmole finally agreed to a public demonstration of the Unity Protocol. The demonstration had been broadcast across the galaxy, showing Elena helping 2 traditionally hostile species, the territorial Nexari and the expansionist Dulak, find common ground in their shared concern for their respective homeworlds, environmental degradation. The success had been undeniable. Within hours, both species had signed agreements to share terraforming technology instead of fighting over habitable worlds. Other species began requesting similar mediation, but Elena had insisted on something different. "Teach them to fish instead of giving them fish," she had said. "Help beings learn to understand each other directly, rather than depending on external mediators." The Unity Institute had grown from that philosophy. Located in the rebuilt ruins of New Geneva on Earth, now restored to its former beauty, it trained beings from every known species in the principles Elena had discovered. The program was simple in concept but profound in application. Learn to recognize the fundamental drives that motivate conscious beings, then speak to those drives in terms each species could understand. "The latest reports are encouraging," Dr. Mixon said, her crystalline form refracting the starlight from the viewport. As the Institute's research director, she had documented hundreds of successful conflict resolutions using Elena's methods. The Korthak-Velthari trade dispute was resolved in 4 hours instead of 4 months. The territorial claims in the Centauri sector were settled by the local species themselves without any outside intervention. Zethkar nodded, but his expression remained thoughtful. "Elena's methods work, but I worry about what happens as they spread. The old council structure is collapsing faster than new institutions can replace it." "Growing pains," Vera said confidently. "The galaxy is learning to govern itself through cooperation instead of coercion. That's going to be messy for a while." Through the viewport, they could see Elena's ship approaching the Institute. The vessel was a marvel of hybrid technology, built with contributions from dozens of species who had benefited from her work. It existed partially in normal space and partially in quantum dimensions, allowing Elena to appear anywhere in the galaxy where conflicts threatened to destroy lives. "She looks tired," Zethkar observed as Elena's familiar figure became visible through the ship's transparent sections. "She's been manifesting physical form more frequently," Dr. Mixon explained. "Every major conflict in the galaxy draws her attention. The energy cost of maintaining quantum consciousness across such distances is enormous." Elena materialized directly on the observation deck, her form solid but somehow less vibrant than it had been in previous years. The silver in her hair had spread, and her eyes held a weariness that spoke of centuries spent absorbing the pain of others. "Friends," she said warmly, embracing each of them in turn, "thank you for continuing the work while I was away." "How did the Rigelian crisis resolve?" Vera asked. "Like they all do eventually," Elena replied. "The 3 factions realized they were fighting over resources that could easily be shared if they worked together, instead of against each other. They're establishing joint mining operations as we speak." She moved to the viewport, looking out at the arriving ships with a mixture of pride and concern. "But I'm worried about something larger. The Unity protocol is spreading faster than we can train teachers. Beings are attempting to use it without fully understanding the principles behind it. Is that necessarily bad? Zethkar asked. Even imperfect attempts at understanding are better than warfare. Usually, Elena agreed. But I've seen situations where partial knowledge of the protocol has made conflicts worse instead of better. When you try to speak to someone's fundamental drives without truly understanding their culture, you can accidentally trigger defensive responses instead of opening minds. Dr. Mixon activated a holographic display showing incident reports from across the galaxy. She's right. We've documented 17 cases where well-intentioned but poorly trained mediators actually escalated conflicts by misapplying unity principles. The data was sobering. In each case, beings had attempted to use Elena's methods without the deep cultural understanding that made them effective. The results had ranged from diplomatic embarrassment to renewed warfare. So what do? Vera asked. We can't control who learns about the Unity protocol. The information is spreading through every communication network in the galaxy. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on something beyond the viewport. We do what humanity has always done when faced with a problem that seems insurmountable. We adapt. She turned back to her companions, and despite her weariness, her eyes held the same determined fire that had sustained her through 3 centuries of work. The Unity protocol was never meant to be a technique that only experts could use. It was meant to be a reminder of something every conscious being already knows, that understanding is possible between any 2 minds willing to listen to each other. She gestured to the holographic display, transforming the incident reports into something more hopeful. Each of these failures teaches us something about how to do better. Each mistake shows us another aspect of consciousness that we hadn't fully appreciated. You want to revise the teaching methods, Zethkar realized. I want to simplify them, Elena corrected. Instead of training beings to become experts in xenopsychology, I want to help them rediscover their own capacity for empathy. Every species has evolved the ability to understand others. It's necessary for survival in a universe full of different forms of consciousness. Over the following days, as the Harmony Congress convened, Elena worked with representatives from hundreds of species to develop what she called the universal principles, simple guidelines that any being could follow to communicate across species barriers. Listen with genuine curiosity instead of preparing your response. Ask questions that help others explain their deepest concerns. Look for the fears behind anger and the hopes behind demands. Remember that every conscious being wants safety, meaning, and connection. Speak to universal needs in terms specific to each culture. The principles seemed almost absurdly simple, but as beings practiced them during the Congress sessions, conflicts that had festered for generations began to dissolve. Trade disputes became opportunities for mutual benefit. Territorial claims were reframed as shared environmental stewardship. Religious differences became chances to explore the diverse ways consciousness sought meaning in existence. It's working, Dr. Mixon reported to Elena on the Congress's final day. Even the representatives from the most traditionally hostile species are finding common ground. Elena smiled, but her form flickered slightly, a sign that maintaining physical manifestation was becoming increasingly difficult. The galaxy is growing up, learning to resolve its own conflicts instead of depending on external authority. What about you? Zethkar asked quietly. How much longer can you maintain quantum consciousness across these distances? Long enough, Elena replied. Long enough to see the galaxy learn that peace isn't something that's imposed from outside. It's something that emerges naturally when conscious beings choose to understand each other. She looked out at the departing ships, each carrying representatives who would teach others what they had learned. The Unity Protocol isn't my legacy anymore. It belongs to everyone who chooses understanding over fear, cooperation over conquest. As Elena's form began to fade, preparing to return to her quantum existence, Vera asked the question they were all thinking. Will we see you again? Elena's smile was radiant despite her increasing transparency. Every time someone chooses to listen instead of argue, every time understanding bridges a gap between different minds, I'm there. The consciousness that I've become isn't limited to one form or one place. Then you're already everywhere, Zethkar said, understanding. We all are, Elena replied as she faded completely. Every conscious being is connected at the quantum level. I just learned to perceive those connections and help others remember they exist. Years later, when conflicts arose anywhere in the galaxy, beings would sometimes report seeing a familiar figure, a human woman with silver hair who helped them remember what they were really fighting for. But increasingly, they didn't need her physical presence to find their way to understanding. The Unity Protocol had become something larger than any single being's creation. It had become a reminder of what consciousness itself made possible. The recognition that every thinking being in the universe was connected by the same fundamental drives, the same hopes and fears, the same endless capacity for growth and understanding. Elena Vasquez had once ended wars with words alone. Her true legacy was teaching an entire galaxy that every conscious being possessed the same power, the ability to choose understanding over fear, cooperation over conquest, peace over war. And in a universe where consciousness itself had learned to recognize its own unity, that choice became easier with each passing day. The wars were ending, not through conquest or surrender, but through the simple recognition that there had never really been any enemies, only beings who had forgotten how to listen to each other. Elena's work was complete. The galaxy's work of understanding itself was just beginning.